Hi there, and welcome to this week's edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is made by fans for fans, and where the content is absolutely free. And as I say to you every week, guys, it's not just the pod that's free. We have lots of stuff online for you. There's the forums. We've got articles, previews, match reviews, all that kind of stuff. There's a history archive on there as well. It's all original, independent, and free content. Done by us for you. It is episode 110 of the Gersnet Podcast. Can you believe it? You know, we're into triple figures now. I'm your host for tonight. I'm Colin Armstrong. If you're a first-time listener, we would ask you to subscribe to the pod, leave a comment, share it on social media, all that kind of stuff. We've got over 3,000 subscribers now, so thanks to everyone who has subscribed so far. The pod is live tonight. It's a Sunday night, but it will be available to stream or download on a variety of platforms from tomorrow, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, and Spotify. So it's a Sunday night, as I said there. It's the end of what has been a very, very positive week for Rangers. Obviously, we won the game last week against Celtic. At Celtic Park, 2-0, scooshed it. Great result in Europe and a fantastic goal, which we'll come on to talk about later on the show from Kemar Roof. And a fairly, I mean, it wasn't a great game today, but another victory. Leading into hopefully another good week this week, going back into the Europa League stuff and a big game at Killie next week. So it seems to be all going very well. And to put the icing on the cake, so to speak, Celtic dropped further points today up at Aberdeen. So all going very well. It feels like there's a bit of momentum behind Rangers at the moment, and we're definitely heading in the right direction. So lots to talk about, and it's all fairly positive. In terms of guests, we've got Ross tonight, my co-host, who is the host with the most, officially, because his show last week was so successful. It's now had more hits than any other of our previous shows. So I get it up, you Ross.
Any complaints can be forwarded to my secretary. I'm sure that they'll reach me in due course. Do you know what? No, last week it was a good show because, I mean, what a week for us, obviously. Strolling it over in the East End of Glasgow, and there was a real sort of feel-good factor last week, which I have to say I was a wee bit nervous about how it would carry on through the week, and picked up a phenomenal result on Thursday and then again today, which would have been a potential banana skin for us. So, I mean, the Old Firm shows, they always tend to do well if we've won. So it was a good week, and obviously if it ain't broke, don't fix it, which is why I'm back here.
That's it, yeah. It's I listened last week because obviously I was rested. I was put on the bench. Like Jermaine Defoe, you know, the guy that comes on and, you know, every now and again for the wee games. You know what I mean? That's where I am now, in the sort of pecking order. And yeah, you done well. It was good. I believe it was your first Old Firm game where you've been on and we've actually won.
It was. So my record for those Old Firm podcasts has been absolutely atrocious, and it was nice to sort of break that duck and be able to be proud of the team after an Old Firm for a change. So it was good. I would obviously, everyone knows the result, everyone knows how we played, but if you wanted to go back and relive that, it's certainly worth firing back through the old episodes and having a wee listen.
Yeah, it's certainly worth an hour of your time, and after all, guys, that's all it'll cost you, an hour of your time. Have you done any notes for tonight's show, Ross?
No, my pen ran out of ink.
I think we've got a debutant tonight, and he's putting us both to shame because I hear he's built up quite a dossier of notes. And it's Dougie Kinnear. How are you, Dougie?
I'm very well, thank you very much, Colin. A very good week to make my debut on the show as well.
It is. I want to get you on more often if this is the sort of run of form we're going to be on. And how many pages of notes have you got there? Because you've already pointed out that my agenda's nonsense.
I just picked up the one or two flaws, Colin.
Just the one or two,
right? Just the 6 pages of notes for tonight.
Oh, that's not too bad. I've got all of none. I just come on and wing it. You know what I mean?
We've certainly got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, as you say, it's been a great week for the club, and it feels like a long time, I must admit, since I've kind of felt this positive about Rangers. It's even under Gerrard, it was always like 6 or 7 games and then a blip. It was so many steps forward and then 2 steps back kind of thing. But this season so far, touch wood, it all seems very good. So in terms of what we'll look at tonight, guys, obviously we'll talk about the Livingston game tonight. There was a standard Liege game on Thursday. Have a wee discussion around the SPFL contingency plans, to deal with COVID and all that kind of stuff, and a quick sneak preview at the game at Kilmarnock next week. But we're not going to look at the European game, the Lech Poznan game, because hopefully, if we can get enough bodies round, we'll do a wee preview show through the week for that. So on to the Livingston game, Ross, I'll come to you first. After such a positive week, and in terms of 2 huge games, the game at Celtic Park last week, game in Belgium on Thursday night, it did kind of feel like a lesser game, and I'm not being disrespectful to Livingston there. It was the third of the 3 games of the week in terms of status and all that kind of thing, but you've still got to be professional and see it out. And I thought, first half Rangers played okay. They got a fairly early goal through Aribo. Then they got that great goal, which we'll come on to talk about, from Defoe, his 300th. Second half, I thought we were a bit sluggish. But overall, it felt like a fairly routine victory to me. Is that how it felt to you?
Absolutely. I think that the first thing to say, though, is that in terms of importance on paper for the league and for points, this was as important as the Celtic game last Saturday. So there was no, there's no leeway or there's no excuse for not taking this game seriously. And Rangers came out, and in the first 20 minutes they did all the business they had to do. And in a way, actually, I'm quite pleased to see that, because obviously we've all been on this show talking about Rangers struggling to break down stuffy defences and organised units. So Rangers come out. Within 20 minutes, they're 2 goals up, and they, with the best will in the world, Livingston are not going to pose us 2 goals worth of problems at Ibrox. So you can actually kind of allow the lads to take it a wee bit easier, and it's a monumental effort that they've put in over the last 7 or 8 days. They actually, by coming out and doing all the business in the first 20 minutes, they bought themselves the luxury of being sluggish or being a bit more careless and taking it easier, and I don't begrudge them that at all. There's absolutely no way that they can be as clinical, as efficient as they were in the previous 2 games, consistently and indefinitely. So for them to come out and play the way they did for the first 20 minutes, get the 2 goals, and then allow themselves some breathing room, I have absolutely no concerns about that at all. I agree that the second half, it was a wee bit of a bore and a bit of a chore to watch. I don't remember a great deal of it. But this was the kind of game that can be a real potential banana skin to Rangers. Maybe not so much because it was at Ibrox, but we have struggled against teams like Livingston in the past. Last season we lost to Hamilton at home. So it was the kind of game that, after such a momentous week and such a huge amount of effort that obviously had to be put in Liège on Thursday, don't underestimate the physical toll that kind of heavy pitch would have taken on them. That would have been some real physical exertion, and the players would have been tired from the travelling. And I'm actually quite proud of the way that they came out so, tenacious early doors, got the 2 goals, and allowed themselves the time to take that game a little bit easier.
Dougie, coming to you, there was quite a change in personnel today. I was a wee bit surprised at how many changes there were. Barisic was obviously a wee twinge through the week, so he was left out. Arfield and Kamara were left out. I was surprised at that. And Morelos were all left out. Obviously Defoe came in for him. Aribo came in the middle of the park, and and Ryan Jack started again today in the league. It used to be, and then the previous 2 seasons under Gerrard, it's kind of felt when he tinkered with his squad so much, which you've got to do, especially when you've got European games, midweek games and all the rest of it. You've got to sort of rotate. But whenever he tinkered too much, it did feel like we took a big dunt in quality. It didn't feel like that to me today. Is that now a sign? And I did notice that Gary McAllister said in his sort of post-match interview that he feels that they've got 2 players for every position now. Is there a sign there now at Rangers that there is strength and depth, and it's probably the first time that Gerrard's had that in his squad?
Yes, I think we've got the opportunity right now to rotate the squad without compromising the quality. When you look at the changes, both for the standard game midweek and obviously Livi today, I think all the changes are deliberate as well. He rested Helander midweek because Helander had a knock. He rested Barisic today because Barisic had a knock. He rested Davis midweek because Davis is getting on in age. He wanted to rest Arfield because Arfield had. He wanted to rest Arfield today because Arfield had 8 starts in a row. And he wanted to bring in Aribo to get Aribo some much needed game time after a lengthy spell off. But the one change that I do want to spend a moment to reflect on is Defoe starting, because I actually called 4. I called the first 4 of the 5 changes in my chat with my mates. The one that I got wrong was Defoe starting, and I don't think there's many who would have called Defoe being our first choice centre forward for today. But I did predict that Morelos would drop out. Morelos didn't have a particularly great game against Standard. Before the pre-match press conference from Gerrard, I predicted that Roof would start. But it was obvious from that press conference when Gerrard was talking about protecting Roof and gradually bringing him in, that Roof wouldn't start. But when he said that, I then assumed Etienne would start. And I think Etienne could probably feel a little bit hard done by in terms of not getting given that start. But when the game kicked off, you could see why Defoe started for me. Gerrard spoke about Defoe being hungry. He looked hungry. But it was more around the position that Defoe was taking up. And you've seen it in the goal, and I know we're going to come on to it. But I think we played a clear tactic to exploit the Livi defence, and in particular, Effie Ambrose. So many times throughout the game, there was a long diagonal ball being played from either Tav or from Goldson. And that's where we got the Defoe goal from. And I don't think there's anybody else in our squad that would be capable of making that run and finishing the way that Jermaine Defoe done. 300 career goals. That was a top quality finish from a top quality player today.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I hadn't really considered that. We've got 3 sort of strikers that all offer different things. I think it was Kevin Thompson that mentioned through commentary that we were getting a lot of joy with the sort of the longer, more direct balls from Goldson and from Tav. So that's an interesting point, and it was a great finish. We'll come on and talk about it later, but it was a superb finish. Ross, coming back to yourself, the other player that sort of came in today, he's been out, for most of this season, was Aribo, and he was in a really good sort of vein of form when he went out. And I think there was a feeling that we would miss him, and it would hurt our sort of ambitions in our league campaign. But it's not really turned out that way. The guys that have come in and replaced him, boys like Arfield and all the rest of it, have done very, very well. He took his goal well very early on. I actually thought Defoe could have finished that chance, but it's came back, sort of ricocheted about the box, played across, and he's finished it well. I mean, everyone, Kevin Thompson, again, going back to Kevin Thompson on Rangers TV today, it's almost waxing lyrical about Aribo in terms of, he's seen a lot of him in pre-season, and he is heavily tipping him to be a huge player for us this season. And to be fair, it did look like that in the earlier games before his injury. So how important do you think, keeping him fit will be for Rangers this season?
Well, it's a funny one because whilst I'm absolutely delighted, of course, that we haven't struggled in his absence, I don't think there's any doubt that Joe Aribo makes us a better team. And he offers something that I don't think anyone else in the squad offers. He's a very creative player, but not in the same way as a Jordan Jones or a Brandon Barker. It's not get the ball down and run with pace and try and get it in the box. He's close control, and he's take a player on, and he just sort of has that, I don't know, spark or creativity that you don't actually often see in the Scottish game. So I think he is certainly one of our strongest assets, and I absolutely believe that he makes us stronger. Whether that means that we wouldn't have drawn the games that we drew had he been available, I'm not sure that's fair to say. But the goal itself, I agree Defoe could have, maybe should have put that away, but credit to Yanis Hadji, I think, for having the composure to pick out Aribo in the way that he did. Joe Aribo's form in pre-season was, of course, excellent. And I remember watching the pre-season friendlies on Rangers TV and getting excited. And it's a shame the way his season has been disrupted. But again, commentary on Rangers TV today, Kevin Thompson said that we're looking for players who can play 50 games a season. And if Joe Aribo misses 8, 9, 10 games, then in the grand scheme of things and the number of games we want to play this year, it's not a huge amount. So I think he will have a massive role for us. I think he's good domestically and good in Europe. I think he doesn't shy away from the bigger games. I think you could see what it meant to him as well to score today. I mean, he's usually one of these characters who's, in interviews, he comes across as a little bit more reserved and a little bit more docile. But you could see what it meant to him to come back into the squad and get that goal. So I think it's probably been a very, very frustrating time for him. When it comes to the points and the goals we scored at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like we've missed him, but I'm absolutely delighted to have him back available.
Dougie, coming back to you, and you kind of covered some of it, earlier on when you were talking about the players that came in today. Now, Defoe got his 300th career goal today, and I don't think he could have wished for a better goal. It was just so simple and a sign of a natural striker, in my opinion. He was so composed, just a one-touch finish. It reminded me a wee bit of Yelovic's goal against Hearts a few seasons ago at Tynecastle. It was a kind of similar thing, long ball over the defence and a sort of one-touch finish. Now he is getting on, and I think he is at that stage in his career where we're going to pick and choose when he gets game time and all the rest of it. But I mean, the finish showed that there's still a lot of quality there. He's obviously not got the legs. He's not going to give you 90 minutes every week, but every now and again, like today, he's going to provide a good option, and surely that's good. We've got Morelos, who personally I'm surprised that he's still there, but you've got Morelos, who's someone who likes to get sort of touch tight and battle with defenders. You've got Ruth, who I think looks like someone who's going to, bring others into play very well. He links up the play very well and finishes very well. But Defoe, he's a different kind of finisher. But it seems to me he scores more times than he doesn't when he gets game time. And surely that's a good option for Rangers.
Yeah, there's life in the old dog yet. When Rangers have scored a good goal, when you get text messages off of your non-Rangers supporting mates, my phone lit up, as I'm sure most people's did, when Ruth scored midweek. And I get the occasional text today from mates south of the border when Defoe scored his goal, because it was a very good goal. I did say earlier on, I think he's the only player capable of scoring that goal. I do think he's a fourth choice centre forward these days. I think he's here because of his experience, his influence in the dressing room. But there's absolutely still going to be times where Jermaine Defoe is the man to play for Rangers, whether that's starting or off the bench. But it's probably more likely that he'll come off the bench. And for me, you spoke about the different options that we've got there. If we are drawing nothing each in a game and you want to change your style, you've got the opportunity to play it long to someone like Etienne. Have the ball in and around the box for a penalty box finisher like Jermaine Defoe, or you've got the difference of Ruth, who you said someone who's capable of linking the play up, and Morelos, who for me is probably still the best suited player for European football, because he's capable of holding the ball up, allowing Rangers to move up in possession. But it's great to have those four options, because I do think throughout this season there's going to be different games where we need to use those different options.
Sorry, I was talking on mute there. Sorry. Aye, you've made great points there, guys. I'll run this one past the two yous there. Now it's 7 straight wins for Rangers. We've now played everyone in the league at least once. No one's beat us. It definitely feels like there's a bit of momentum in the squad at the moment. Now, I do believe, I know Ross is too young to remember it, and going by the conversation we had before we came on air, Dougie, I think you'll be the same. but I remember, like in the 1992-93 season, it was round about October time. You know, we got the Leeds games, we got those out the road. We had the League Cup final early on. You know, we beat Aberdeen, and it was round about October, November. You started to feel that, you know, there was something in this team, and obviously I didn't think we were going to get within a goal of the Champions League final, but it certainly felt like a treble was up for the grabs and all that kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying that this team's going to win a treble, but there certainly feels like there's a bit of momentum behind this team at the moment. Would you agree with that, Ross?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Clive Tilsley summed it up quite nicely today, actually, when he sort of alluded to the comfort or the ease with which Rangers are racking up the routine wins. And, you know, I was just having a look back through our fixtures there and the results that we've had over the past few weeks. And, you know, so obviously, well, just looking at the league, the Old Firm was as easy as it's been for a number of years. Ross County a couple of weeks before that wasn't particularly enjoyable to watch, but, you know, we weren't caused too many problems. And then before that, you're looking at Motherwell, who we beat 5-1. And it's the ease with which we're dispatching of these teams without really causing any problems, without having any stress or difficulty, or, you know, relying on a late winner or anything like that. So there does feel like there's something about this team. There does feel a certain air of invincibility about the team, you know, and that's, like you say, that's not to say that we'll go through this season without being beaten, but we've played everyone in the league now. We haven't lost to anyone. We've drawn 2, and I think we've conceded 3 goals. I mean, that's staggering when you think about it. 3 goals to be conceded after the first round of fixtures. So yeah, there does feel like there's something special about this group. But what's interesting about that is that the group hasn't been radically overhauled since last year. You know, the core of that team is exactly the same, with 1 or 2 supplements or 1 or 2 enhancements. So it feels like, I don't know, maybe there's been a shift in the mentality of the players. They're holding themselves a bit differently. They have a slightly different outlook or different mindset. And obviously that's kind of, yeah, it's led to some form of implosion over in the other end of the city. And all of these factors coming together, it does fill me with a massive deal of optimism.
What about yourself, Dougie? I mean, even with regards to Gerrard, you know, I think the first 4 or 5 games in his first season, you know, we drew at Pittodrie in the first game, then we drew at Motherwell a couple of games later, you know, and then last season there was a slight improvement, but every now and again you'd get a wee done. But this year it just seems to be, there's a lot more focus. You know, there seems to be just this mentality in the squad that they're going to get the job done, and that includes Europe as well.
Yeah, Gerrard's a young manager. You know, he's only 3 years into his managerial career. You spoke about the Aberdeen game and the opening game of his campaign. He was still learning. I think he's learned a lot. You can see it in the way we play. We've got a real identity to the way we play football now. It's something that our neighbours across our side of the city are probably lacking at the moment. Ross touched on it. Our defensive record's astounding. Only 3 goals conceded in the league, 4 overall this season. From a mentality perspective, though, I think that's the biggest thing. You know, we've brought in better players that equip ourselves for different challenges, that allows us to mix and match depending on the opposition. But it's a mentality. Ross touched on it there. We do have a different look about us at the moment. Connor Goldson was actually on TalkSport. I think it was before the Standard game. It was definitely after the Celtic game. And he actually spoke very differently. You know, in previous campaigns after beating Celtic, everyone would be on a high. You see it in the difference in the celebrations. Could be different because there was no crowd in. But when we beat Celtic at Celtic Park last season, everyone remembers the scenes where Steven Gerrard was up at the camera, everyone was in the crowd. This time around, it felt like business as usual. And that's the way it should be at Rangers. And it's a good sign when we are comfortable winners, when we're not playing at our best.
I think you've made a good point. I think Ross and the guys touched on it last week. You know, Gerrard made comments after the win on Saturday against Celtic about we have to be humble. And I think, you know, I think he's felt a bit stung by the sort of reaction to his celebrations in December, considering what happened. You know what I mean? You know, he'd put his face in the camera and the players all celebrated. I think the crowd does have something to do with it, but I think that's a good point. I think there is a marked change in how Rangers are conducting themselves at the moment. When they win games, it's true what you're saying. There's not the same sort of euphoria. Say the crowd's maybe part of that, but I do think lessons have been learned. I think now whether that takes us over the line is yet to be seen, but I think it bodes well. I think we're a different beast and a different animal this season. Guys, moving on to Thursday night.
Colin, can
sorry,
I just make one more point? I'm going to say one more to kind of give a different angle on things, because I seen a stat today on Twitter, which is we're only 1 point better than what we were last year. And I think when you're talking there about Gerrard remaining humble, I think it's because when you look at that stat in itself and all the positivity that we have just now, I'm not taking away the positivity because we are playing very good football and we look different. The bit I was going to come on to there was when Goldson was on TalkSport and speaking about the Old Firm performance, he spoke about moving on to the next game. And that's what I like to hear. But I think it's that realisation that we are only 1 point better than we were last year. We didn't win the league last year. So therefore, there is a real focus amongst the players and the management team that we need to move on to the next game and win the next game. You know, Ross said earlier on that today was as important as the Celtic game. For me, the mentality that this team needs to have is the next game is the most important game of our season.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's what good teams do. You know, it's you do your job, and then just move on to the next game. But I do think there's a difference. There's also a difference. I mean, a lot of the positivity around what's happening us now is because of another team's form at the moment. I mean, if we're only 1 point better off, then you know the team over the road are a few points worse off. So, and that makes us feel better. But I do think we are a different animal this season. I know we've said it before, but it does feel a bit different this season. And as I said, even in Europe, and that's where we'll go now. Now, Ross, I don't know where you were on Thursday night. I'm assuming you were just in the house. I know you quite enjoy an away trip, but given you wouldn't have got in, I'm assuming you didn't bother on Thursday. But a good performance and a great result on Thursday night against Standard Liège, and another first for Gerrard. I think it was Alex that's pointed out. You know, he's never won an away game in the group stages, and now he's done that. And there is that box ticking exercise that Gerrard seems to be doing. All these things that he's not done, he seems to be getting them done now, and that bodes well. But in terms of the performance and result on Thursday night, what did you think of
that? Well, I think first of all it was going to be a tricky tie. A lot was made of standards, or standard, if you're Alec Ray. A lot was made of their sort of defensive records and how well they've done at home in Europe. But I don't know. There's something about this team that I went into that game knowing that we'd get the result. You know, that was nowhere near the trickiest European tie we've faced over the last 3 seasons. So look, the guys had a game plan that they executed very, very well. But what most impressed me, I think, actually, was when the weather turned and when that pitch became a swamp. We sort of had the intelligence or the intellect to deal with it. So we stopped trying to play the ball on the deck. We stopped trying to do nice little triangles and passes, and we started lifting it, and it worked. And we you know, of course, we got caught out with the ball holding up in the water, but we didn't get caught out as much as Standard did. So, you know, I think obviously we'll come on to talk about the goal, which is, you know, utterly staggering. But I was really, really pleased with the performance. Again, that's the second game in a row, probably in arguably our two toughest games of the season on paper, where we have not allowed a single shot on target. We had more shots on target from our own half than Standard did on our goal. And it was a classic, perfect European away performance. And what a way to start that campaign, because it was a potentially tricky tie. We go over to Belgium 2-0. By the way, playing in front of fans, that I think that could have had some kind of psychological factor or some kind of mental impact to be playing in front of hostile fans again. And it just didn't faze us. The weather didn't faze us. The pitch didn't faze us. Nothing fazed us. And all in all, that's a very, very successful day.
So yeah, I think Ross makes a valid point there. I mean, I wouldn't say I knew we would get the result. but it certainly feels like different times for Rangers in Europe at the moment. I felt confident we would get the result, whereas traditionally when you're going away from home in Europe, you're always a wee bit, could be tight, if we get a draw, as long as we don't lose, that kind of thing. But I felt fairly confident that we could come away with something on Thursday night there. Tav got the opening goal from the spot. First question, no doubts about the penalty, really. I mean, it looked fairly blatant.
No doubts about the penalty decision. No doubts about the penalty kick. I'm a Tav fan. Anyone who follows me knows that I'm a Tav fan. I made a joke about it on Twitter today that at the beginning of the season, when I done a squad review, I said that Rangers had the two best fullbacks in the country, and I was mocked by some of our own support for saying that. I don't think there'll be many doubters out there right now, both from Tav and Barisic. Going back to Tav as a penalty kick taker, though, Tav is our best penalty kick taker. He's very calm, he's very composed when he's hitting his penalty kick. Obviously, he had a pretty bad run of penalty kicks, which led to Morelos hitting the penalty kick against Celtic in the cup final. But I'm glad to see he's got that confidence back, because Barry Ferguson actually said today, I think it was at post-match, that Tav right now is playing like a Rangers captain, and that's high praise from arguably one of the best Rangers captains of my lifetime.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about Barry being one of the best. I don't understand the stick that Barry gets. In terms of Tav, I think we spoke about this in the pod before. There has been times, I think the criticism he gets has been warranted at times. He has made errors, same as Goldson. The one thing I would say about Goldson and Tav, whenever they do make errors, statistically they do tend to lead to goals, and that leads to criticism, and that's just the nature of the beast. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a big fan of people. I've seen people tweeting players directly to criticise them and all that kind of thing. I'm not overly keen on that, but I think some of the criticism that Tav received was merited. But this season, I think Barry's right. I think he is playing like a captain. His consistency is incredible. His consistency from the spot. Looking back on it, you're kind of thinking, I wish he had taken that penalty in the cup final last season against Celtic, but that particular time it wasn't quite going from. But this season, yeah, I think he looks. I think him and Goldson both look like men on a mission. That they know what's required now. They've been over the ground, 2 or 3 years now, and they know what they need to do. They know where the errors have happened and what's caused the problems. So yeah, I think I agree. I think he does look like a captain now. Absolutely. Guys, coming to the goal. Well, first thing, Ross, a wee quick thing. Have you ever seen weather like that? Have you ever seen a pitch look so good and then 15 minutes later look almost unplayable? I mean, you were giving it on the WhatsApp at one stage. You thought the game might be abandoned.
I was worried. I was really worried. No, I actually think I heard it before I saw it. I thought it was sort of static or interference on the feed. But no, I mean, so I don't know if this is allowed, and I don't know if they'll thank me for saying it. But I think a lot of people know I used to live in Luxembourg, which is 2 hours drive away from Liège, and I had members of the Luxembourg True Blues who are friends of mine who managed to get tickets through the Liège Luxembourg Supporters Club, and they were texting me saying that they'd never seen weather like it. So I couldn't. I was getting really, really worried and really nervous about abandonment. I was googling UEFA protocols, what happens if the game's abandoned, and it got to 80 minutes, and I was comfortable that even if it was abandoned, they'd probably give us the result anyway. So and again, credit to the players, because you can't really train for that. You're not going to go and do drills in a swimming pool. So they had to find a way through it, and they coped better. They coped better than Liège did, and that's why they got the result.
Well, guys, we'll come on to the moment of the match. Now, the weather played a bit of a part in it, I felt, because I can't remember the boy's name, but Liège had a chance to equalise right at the death, and it seemed to me that he misread the sort of flight of the ball, so to speak, because of the weather, and then we managed to get it away. Dougie, the goal for Roof. Now, Gerard says it's the best he's seen live. The BBC Scotland done everything they could to sort of discredit that the following day. Now, from my point of view, I think these finishes are always slightly overrated. You know, I thought the Beckham goal was overrated. You know, Charlie Adams done it a few times. Wayne Rooney's done it. Alonso at Liverpool. You know, I do think that if a player sees the goalkeeper off the line, if he hits it on target, he's in with a chance. You know, if there's enough weight in it and it's on target and the keeper's far enough out, he's in with a chance. However, for me, the difference with this one is when he picks the ball out just outside his own 18-yard box. You know, he has two sort of sturdy challenges. He beats another couple of guys, and he's not central. He's kind of between the centre circle and the sort of throw-in line. You know, and he just sort of quickly looks up. So it's what he does to put himself into the position. Once he realises the keeper's off his line, if he gets it right, he's in with a chance. But in terms of those types of goal, I don't think there's any doubt. It's the best I've ever seen.
Colin, first things first, I want you to go down to the park tomorrow morning, go beyond the halfway line and see if you can hit the target the way that Roof done.
Can I just say I done it against the Anchor in 1996 in the Falkirk District League, Falkirk District Sunday Amateur League. Anyway, that was 20 odd years ago. I can't kick the ball 10 yards now.
Video evidence that it didn't happen. I think in terms of the comparison to the goals that you mentioned, it's right up there. It's better, to be honest. It set the Europa League record for furthest goal scored with 54.6 yards. But I think it's a build-up that makes it so special. As you said, he wins the ball back. He beats three men, and he takes a shot on from inside his own half. I loved Ross's stat there, where he said that we had more shots on their goal from our own half than they did on ours. Good work. I love that one. But the keeper's reaction was brilliant as well, because the keeper's going down.
He's got cramp.
It's hilarious. I love the fact that he pretended he had cramp. But one of the things I was chatting to a few people on Twitter about the best European goals that Rangers have scored. And one of the things that Martin Ramsey had said was the context of the goal always really adds a bit of weight to the decision that you have when you're choosing your favourite goal. And I think the context of that goal is huge, because we've spoken about Standard being a very good side. You know, they were unbeaten at home in their last 16 games across 6 years, including a draw against Arsenal last year. They are no mugs. They're a very good side. Right before that goal, as you said, Colin, they had a huge chance to score, and we rode our luck in injury time. When that one hits the net, though, I'm on my feet. I'm screaming, and I've woken up my 3-year-old. So apologies to the wife for that. But I'm going to throw it out there in terms of my favourite ever European goal, because you touched on you don't necessarily appreciate that kind of goal. My favourite kind of goal is a team goal, and if I was to say that my favourite kind of goal is a team goal, which of the Rangers European goals do you think would be my favourite?
Dortmund.
Rod Wallace, 100%.
That was
that goal.
It's a great goal. Yeah, it's such an underrated goal. You know what I mean? It's like 23, 24 passes or something like that. You know what I mean? As I said, I was there that night, and the celebrations were just the biggest disappointment was it didn't get us through. You know what I mean? We kind of threw it away in the last minute in the away leg, but it's just a goal that it's better than Roof's. I think I've got to be honest with you. I would agree with that.
There's a few that are in there. I debated on Mark Hateley against Leeds. Spoke about Leeds earlier on. That was a cracking goal. Again, the context of that, the context of Stephen Whittaker against Sporting Lisbon, all excellent goals. But I think for that moment of shock more than anything, because it was from his own half, the Roof goal will stand out and certainly in my memory for the rest of my life.
What about yourself, Ross? Where does Roof's goal stand for you? I mean, I think we can all agree that it was a cracker. That I mean, where does it lie in that sort of top Rangers goals for you?
I would rank it above Wallace. I think I would. Do you know why? Because I think when you take into consideration, as Dougie says, that the context of the goal is very, very important, and obviously that Liège missing that chance, or the lad fluffing his lines and letting the ball run under his foot, but also things like the pitch. Roof is moving with that ball. He's travelling with a ball that's not really rolling properly on the pitch, and he holds off 3 challenges, goes back for one more. He's off kilter, he's off centre, and it's the 92nd minute. That, to me, that adds to the drama. But my sort of preferred type of goal is a long range top bin effort. That's me, part of the soccer AM generation. So I think actually it's not the best goal that I've ever seen, but it sort of feels like was Tavernier against Peterhead. I absolutely love that goal. I love the technique of it. I love, the execution of such a clean volley straight in the top corner at Hampden. That for me is almost unbeatable.
Ross, I see this. Sorry, Colin. I was going to say, I see this all the time. I was behind the goals for that goal from Tav with my brother-in-law, and what a hit! What a clean hit! You talk about the context of the goal there. I think that one is always underplayed, and I'm going to use the word only with no disrespect to Peterhead, but because it was a Challenge Cup final, it's always underplayed. But that was an incredible hit.
I completely agree. I saw a debate today online, which was, what is Tav's best goal? And they're talking about it's either the Peterhead volley or one of his 2 free kicks from that first season against Hibs. And those 2 free kicks, I was there for both of them. But technically, the second free kick where he scores it from a ridiculous angle because he sees the keeper stood in a stupid position is technically wonderful. It's an incredible free kick and it's very well executed. But that volley is, to me, it's something else. And like you say, what a hit! So for me, I know it's not a European goal, but I think that's probably the best Rangers goal I've seen live.
Can I just point out, guys, that 33 years ago this very day, if we're doing the top trumps for top goals, I was at Hampden watching Davy Cooper ping a free kick past Jim Leighton. So do I win?
You're a lot older than us, obviously, Colin.
Well, I don't win in the age front, obviously. I was only 14, to be fair. But yeah, 33 years ago today. I noticed someone posting that today, that it was 33 years ago today since that cup final. My first cup final. So I think I win in that one. Ross, before we move on to the European stuff, wee bit of stramash at the end of it, a bit of coming together with the players. And I think there was a feeling that Roof had sort of been, disrespectful in his celebration. But again, a wee sign that maybe Rangers have improved in that area. They didn't really rise to it much. What did you make of that?
I enjoyed watching the video. I enjoyed watching the players back each other up. What a change that is from 5 or 6 years ago against Motherwell with Bilal Mojni. But yeah, look, I don't think he was being disrespectful because he made a wee A with his fingers, but there's photos of him doing that when he was playing for Oxford. So
apparently it's his daughters. It's an A and then an L. It's apparently his daughter's initials.
Right, unless he's got some incredible foresight of thinking I'm going to be scoring against Liège in 6 years' time after I played for Anderlecht, then I don't think he was being disrespectful. Their fans were disrespectful to him from the moment he came on. So even if he was being disrespectful, it's hardly the worst thing I've ever seen a player do in celebration. Although that said, it's nowhere near in the same league of disrespect as Andy Halliday putting an arm up in the centre circle at Catherwood.
Yeah,
it was silly. That I think that the coach who done that should. I hope he faces some kind of reprimand from UEFA because he instigated something that was completely uncalled for. But I think it's one of those things that we have a certain air of professionalism about us that water off a duck's back. We get on the plane, get back to Glasgow with 3 points, and that's all that matters.
Dougie, now it's as it's just been pointed out, I'm by far the oldest amongst the 3 on the show tonight. But even for me, this feels like our most consistent run in Europe for a while, and I don't just mean in terms of qualifying, obviously. I mean in terms of how long the run goes on for, how well we play, and in terms of the results. I am now. I mean, Europe was always a wee bit, win your home games and see what you can do away from home, and hopefully it's enough. I'm now confident home and away. You know what I mean? We went to Feyenoord, we went to Porto. We beat Galatasaray a couple of weeks back there. I'm now going into most European games feeling confident, and I can't remember, even under Walter Smith, even under Souness, and maybe a wee bit under Dick Advocat, I just can't remember feeling this confident going into European games. Is that how it feels like to you, that we're looking like a proper European outfit now?
Definitely a proper European outfit. Confident? I'm never confident. You know that. I'm always a pessimist going into a game. Just a reflection on Steven Gerrard's record in Europe as Rangers manager. That was his 36th game in charge of Rangers in Europe. We've only been beaten 5 times, and 2 of those 5 were against Bayer Leverkusen. You talk about, I mentioned earlier on about Steven Gerrard as a young manager learning. In the 90th minute, I was having flashbacks to the Spartak Moscow and the young boys games. But one of the things that you've got to say is, with the experience that we're gaining across these 3 years of playing in Europe, our game management has massively improved. And I think we are now more than capable of remaining calm and collected, continuing to play our game and see out the victory.
Yeah, I'd agree. Absolutely. It feels odd to be a Rangers supporter and feel confident going into. I know Liege are a Real Madrid or a Barcelona, but I genuinely felt confident going into that. And in previous years, you would always go into those kind of games thinking, well, you never know. And I think what Gerrard has done. Actually, when you were talking there, I was making a comparison with what Gerrard's done with us as to what sort of Shankly done with Liverpool. I mean, Liverpool were in the sort of the second division when Shankly arrived, and he turned them into a proper outfit. Now, you consider where Rangers were coming from, even in a European context, after Pedro's disaster, what he's done, how he's turned us around in that arena is nothing. It's nothing short of incredible, really. And the next thing is, obviously, we hope we get some sort of domestic success on top of that now. So, guys, moving on to the next thing. COVID is still here. Obviously, other restrictions have been announced last week there. The pubs are shut again, which old people like me don't like. And there's now a feeling that it could impact in football again. So the SPFL, in their wisdom last week, they issued the 42 member clubs with a questionnaire asking for feedback on how they should proceed if this season is sort of cut short by the current pandemic. Now, I noticed yesterday in the media, Steven Gerrard, he was calling for clarity and fairness from the SPFL. Good luck with that. Dougie, I'll come back to you in this one. Now, given all the stuff that happened at the end of last season, the Dundee shenanigans, the PDF vote that never appeared, and just everything about it all sort of reeked. And given that, the main sort of people in the SPFL, Doncaster, particularly Murdoch McLennan and Rod McKenzie, I think, these are people who are not friends of Rangers. And, any non-Rangers fan listening to this pod would say that's paranoia, but, even Private Eye has highlighted that Murdoch McLennan is not a friend of Rangers, and he's probably not the best person to be in that job. Now, given that distrust, how do you feel about what the SPFL are looking to do? Does it feel like a power grab? Can we trust them? It just feels a bit iffy to me, I must admit.
Can we trust them? I wouldn't trust the SPFL board to organise my kid's 4th birthday party. You said it reeks. I can't remember. I was just trying to Google there how many months we had a break between last season and this season. It was 3-4 months, and that's ample time to come up with the plans for the year ahead. I can't believe that some of the things that they're talking about now, as we're 12 games into the campaign, weren't discussed and decided before the campaign kicked off. And what that drives is inconsistency. You had a different approach to the scenarios in Aberdeen, Celtic and St Mirren. And do I want the SPFL board to have any greater power to make decisions? Absolutely not, because I would worry that they would be largely inconsistent with other countries across the rest of the world. Could you imagine the SPFL make the decision to forfeit the league early, and Rangers are still competing in this season's Europa League? Or even better still, could you imagine they decided to forfeit the league this season and Celtic were still playing in last season's cup?
That's the sort of point I'm talking about. Especially now that I think I'm probably more concerned because Rangers are playing so well. We're top of the league. We could technically, as we're about to come on and discuss, Celtic don't have a game next season. They've obviously got games in hand, but we could go 9 points clear next week. And in my opinion, a precedent has been set. If the league gets called early, then they follow a procedure. But as you've pointed out, Dougie, they've changed the goalposts so many times. And I think a lot of clubs are becoming a bit frustrated. Kilmarnock are now in the dock on this, saying that they've not followed protocols. They disagree. And it just seems that there has been no consistency throughout the whole thing. They seem to be making it up as they go or shifting the goalposts as they go. And I'm not convinced that, say we get to Christmas, New Year, and this situation, continues and the season can't go on. I'm not convinced they would go down the same road that they went down last season, if you know what I mean. And that's the issue. That's the consistency. Ross, how do you feel about it? Are you suspicious about, this move by the SPFL? It does, given that we're not in the best terms with them, it does feel like there's manoeuvres being made in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't considered that point that Dougie made there about timing. It should have all been done before a ball was kicked this season. I remember that when Celtic were handed the title, one of the sources that was cited was, well, in France they've already given the title to PSG. That's because the French league's constitution and codified documentation surrounding the regulation and construction of that league is that if the league cannot continue, then whoever is top of the league at the point of cancellation will be given the title. Now that's obviously very kind of brutish and not very sophisticated or nuanced, but at least there's like provision to do something. You'd have thought that they would at least have changed the structure of the league or changed the regulation of the league to put some kind of clause like that in. So the timing of it's really, really strange. As Dougie says, there were three months to figure something out ahead of the new season. But I can actually see why the SPFL, why the organisation and body would want to do something like this, would want to look like they're gathering sort of member feedback on this, because they were accused of acting in self-interest last time. Right? They were accused of making things up as they go along. So if they can get a number of clubs saying we should act in this way, then they can blame everything on the club. Whatever fallout, whatever controversy happens, well, the clubs voted for this. This is how the clubs wanted it.
But so Ross, sorry to cut over there. Would you even trust the SPFL board to use the data correctly? I mean, if they came out and said X amount of clubs said this, I don't know how I would even believe that.
Well, that's exactly the point. There has to be transparency. And transparency was the issue 4 or 5 months ago when Celtic were given the title. It was all around transparency. Remember when there was the vote about what should we do with Big Bad Rangers, and should we allow them graciously to stay in our league as a favour, or should we put them down to the third division? That was all public. Everyone knew the outcome of those votes. So to me, that's a precedent that when the clubs are voting on this kind of thing, it has to be transparent and it has to be made public, so that there can be no skullduggery in the background. You would hope that the intense scrutiny that the SPFL was placed under in the summer would sort of be enough of a lesson to them that they cannot carry on sort of with these backhand deals and shady goings on behind closed doors. They have to be transparent with their public. They have to. There's too much at stake, particularly this season. This season of all seasons, they have to make sure that everything is whiter than white. So, do I have any faith that they will do that? No, absolutely not. Not at all. These questionnaires, these these letters that have gone out to clubs asking for their feedback on what we should do should COVID take grip of the season. We will never, ever hear about these until the SPFL can use them in a way that would further their cause.
Ross, that's a good point to interject. Have we seen the questions that were asked in the questionnaire?
No,
I've not seen them. No,
there's 6. Let me read some of them out to you, because I think they're good questions, but questions that should have been asked before the season. So question number 1 is, clubs recently rejected a resolution that would have given the SPFL board powers to manage COVID-related disruption to the league programme this season. Would you now support such a resolution if it were brought back to clubs? Number 2, would you give the SPFL board the power to award a 0-3 result against any team unable to play a fixture due to COVID? Number 3, is it too early to take binding decisions on COVID? Number 4, how many fixtures do you believe need to be completed for a season to be valid? Number 5, would you give the SPFL board the power to call the season? And number 6, would you give the SPFL board the power to void the season?
Well, we were not told previously that void wasn't an option because there was so much sponsor money, and
what sponsor?
That wasn't. Well, there was a sponsor there. Well, not sponsor money, the prize money.
No, I know.
The clubs would only get the prize money if there was official placings, and that's the thing. There's so much inconsistency and lack of transparency. And you just. Sorry, on you go.
No, I was going to say, see if it was me pre the season kicking off, I would have wanted those decisions to be made. Talking about forfeiting games, that should have been agreed beforehand, so that you don't have scenarios where you've got the Aberdeen 8 allowing the game to be postponed and replayed at a future time. I think it was the St Mirren game where they played against Celtic. Was it a Celtic game where their keepers were missing? But the original fixture would have been played and their keepers would have been fit. But the first game was postponed and the second game was played.
Yeah, St Mirren were given 24 hours. I don't think it was against Celtic, but I think they played against Celtic a week or two after that. But they were given 24 hours to find a keeper.
Yeah,
I can't remember who they were playing against, but and now they're saying, what game was postponed yesterday? Was it the Hamilton game yesterday that was postponed? So they're postponing games now, whereas previously they were telling clubs you need to go out and get players, and it's up to you. There's no consistency, as you have both pointed out. There's no transparency over this. It just seems to me that they're making it up as they go along, and now they're asking clubs for feedback. And again, my biggest fear is, will we see what the club said? What club said what? I don't think we will. You know what I mean? And I don't trust those 3 men, and particularly McLennan and Rod McKenzie. I do not trust them to do anything that would be beneficial to Rangers. So the whole thing, I would like to see Rangers be at the forefront of this conversation to make sure that everything's above board. But I don't know. It just seems a bit Del Boy to me. You know what I mean?
My biggest concern right now is that Rangers haven't been impacted by COVID yet.
Yeah.
For me, it's only a matter of time before it happens. We spoke about the Stramash at the end of the Standard game. One of the players that was right at the forefront of that Stramash was Maxime Lestien. He's one of the 3 players that have tested positive following the Rangers game for Standard. That's got to be a huge concern. You then look at the Scotland fixtures during international break. They travel to what? Israel, Slovakia, Serbia. It's inevitable that some players are going to contract COVID, and the fact that we're still playing international games. I joked about the Cup semi-final being played next weekend. The fact we're still playing last season's Cup at a time where they're actually having debates about whether we'll be able to complete this season makes it all a mockery for me.
Yeah, but you know why they're trying to finish that Cup, though, don't you? You know what I mean? There's simple reasons for that. Guys, do we think, before we move on to a quick preview of the Kelly, do we think that some of the clubs that voted against, an independent inquiry into how the SPFL operate are regretting their vote now?
Kilmarnock.
Ross?
I don't know. I don't know that everything is too governed by self-interest. I mean, I'm actually sat here trying to work out how would I want Rangers to respond to that questionnaire. Like, even if you try and remove all element of self-interest, if you're a team sat in 5th at the moment, how the hell do you respond to that? Like, how are you supposed to say I am happy to give them power to void the season or call the season, or I honestly don't know what the answer is. So in a way, I feel sorry for clubs who would be trying to make the right decision, and that's before you get the inevitable pressure that we know has been put on club chairmen over the last 6 months. It's an absolute minefield to try and unpick that and pick the right thing to do. What would be interesting, I would love for the responses to this to be published, because I think you would see the sickening amount of self-interest from Celtic. I'm convinced that they will be begging for this season to be voided. And
that's the point. If we get to March and the same thing happens, the same chairman, that were leaned on last season to vote one way, if Rangers are in, at the top of the table, they'll be getting leaned on to vote another way, surely.
Well, exactly, and it's the one thing that can stop all of this is transparency, and that seems to be the one thing that Scottish football governance is allergic to.
Yeah, well, can't disagree with that, Ross. Right, guys, conscious of time, so a quick wee look at the Kelly game next week. Kelly, they're sitting fifth at the moment. They lost to Hibs yesterday, but it was quite a tight game by all accounts. Steven Gerrard's record there is a bit sticky. I'd put on the agenda that he'd never won there, but actually he won the first game of the season last season with a late goal by Connor Goldson. But it is a ground that causes us problems. Artificial pitch always causes us issue. Guys, Dougie, I'll come to you first. Celtic not playing next week so that they can get their quadruple treble or whatever it is they're on. We've got the chance to go 9 points clear. Kelly, they're still a strong side. They're an awkward side, but they don't seem to be the same team that they were under Steve Clarke. Surely this provides us an opportunity to really put down a marker. One, to get a result there and just say, well, you know what, Kelly are no longer a bogey team, and two, to put more distance between us and Celtic.
Yeah, Kelly don't seem like the same team, but neither do we. Absolutely, Kelly don't feel like the same team they were under Steve Clarke, which seemed to be our bogey team because of the way that they played. But there's two things that come back to the way that we play football just now that makes it really different to last season. One is the personnel. I think we now have the personnel available to us that allows us to mix it up depending on the opposition, and where we've struggled before to beat teams that play the low block against us. I think we showed it today against Livi that we can change things. We've seen the long ball, for example, that was how against Celtic, for example. So I think the personnel allows us to approach the game differently. But the biggest thing for me is that mentality. You just spoke about the opportunity to go into the international break 9 points clear ahead of our biggest rivals. And in previous campaigns, I would have been very nervous about that prospect, wondering whether our players can cope with that pressure. I think the mentality just feels very different right now. I don't know what it is. I don't know why things feel so different. We spoke about Goldson and him chatting ahead of the Standard game after the Celtic game. It just feels different just now. I think the two players you mentioned were Tav and Goldson. There's some players and our manager that just seem to have a bit of a grit between their teeth right now and just want to keep winning games. They're almost so consumed right now by winning title 55. And for me, that's what it's all about. It's not about stopping 9.75 or 10 with an asterisk in a row. It's about Rangers winning our next league title, our first in 10 years. And I think there's a lot of people right now at the club who have been around for a long time now. Steven Gerrard is one of them. We're 3 years into his era. I think he's now ready to win the league, and this is a year.
What about yourself, Ross? How are you feeling about next week? As a game that we've had the fear about on previous shows, going back over the last two years.
Yeah, it's not one that I ever particularly enjoy. Like you say, we've had bad memories there. We mentioned on the show a few weeks back, it was either after Hamilton or after Livingston, that plastic pitch is no longer an acceptable excuse for me. We have the exact same type of Astro at the training centre at Auchenhowie, so it shouldn't be an excuse about plastic pitch. Kilmarnock have players that just always seem to hurt us. They always have players that seem to do well against us. They have one or two players. Chris Burke this season seems to be in really, really good form every time we've seen him. Nicky Kabamba up front as well seems to be hurting teams at the moment. And I always get nervous about Kilmarnock. In the last 4 or 5 years, I mean, the worst ever. I remember Joe Worrell when he gave the ball away and conceded that goal. And I think since then I just have nightmares about Kilmarnock. But Dougie makes a good point. They're not the same team, but more importantly, we're not the same team. And we've spoken so much in the last 3 years about mentality on this show, and something has changed. Something has well and truly changed. And yeah, no, I certainly feel more confident this week than I have done probably for a number of years before going to Rugby Park.
That's good. Hopefully it all goes well, because we've played 11 games, 12 games, only conceded 3 goals. Yeah, I think we should go into that game fairly confident. Guys, conscious of time, I think that's us. We've went through the agenda now and we've sort of ran over the hour a wee bit. So a big thanks to Ross, Bennett and Dougie. Dougie, I forgot your second name. Dougie Kinnear. Yeah, Dougie Kinnear. Yeah, checking the agenda there, sorry. Terrific end to the show. So a big thanks to Ross and Dougie for their contributions tonight. Great stuff as always. We'll be back next week to cover the Kilmarnock game, but we're hopefully going to try and get a preview show out midweek for the game on Thursday night, the Europa League game against Lech Poznan. In the meantime, get yourself on the Gersnet website and forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. Guys, as always, through these strange times, pandemics and restrictions and all that kind of thing, stay safe, look after one another, and until the next time, bye for now.